This was an experience in Nagoya, where I lived when I was in the early grades of elementary school. It was a day in September, still hot and rain was pouring like crazy. On that day, I was on my way home from school with a group of 3 people, including myself and 2 friends of the same grade who lived in the neighborhood. I remember the sky was sticky gray and very dim. When heavy rain fell or strong winds blew due to typhoons, my young heart was thrilled with a sense of the extraordinary. We cackled and joked with each other as we made our way back. I lived where the rice fields were, even though it was in Nagoya, but there were many hills, and the route from home to the elementary school was a slight uphill. It was pouring cats and dogs, and because the area was full with hills, the gutters and drains that ran along the side of the road were filled with water flowing at a tremendous rate. However, the gutters were covered with covers, so whenever we found a place where there was a metal mesh, my friends and I would try to stick a branch into it or pour fallen leaves and play with them. As we were enjoying our little adventure, we found a place where the lid of the gutter had come off and we could see the inside. The amount and force of the water in the ditch was beyond our expectations. We were so excited, we immediately began throwing stones into it and enjoyed watching them being swept away so quickly. It was not every day we saw things like this happen, so we were mesmerized by nature's power and kept throwing things in. Then, someone said, "Hey, let's put umbrellas in the water." We were beginning to get tired of throwing stones and fallen leaves, so we immediately agreed to the suggestion. One of my friends, who was wearing a big raincoat, said, "I'll do it," and closed his umbrella and plunged it into the ditch. The umbrella was swept away in a second by the powerful current, and water got inside the folded umbrella, breaking it instantly. The cracking sound of umbrella bones breaking could be heard coming from the ditch. At that moment, we heard a voice saying, "Hey, you guys! You guys!" I turned around and saw the vice principal running towards us, all wet and drenched. The vice principal, who rushed to the scene, had a very frightened look on his face and said, "It's dangerous. Go home quickly. You shouldn't play here. It's dangerous, I say." He was a person whom we did not usually have much contact with, but being scolded in such a serious tone, each of us fled the scene. When I returned home, I excitedly told my mother about what had happened. Her expression suddenly turned sullen, and she asked me, "Where exactly was the open ditch?" I answered, "At the bottom of the hill, where the lid was busted open." My mother's face instantly turned into a grimace and said, "Oh my God, that place," and began to tell a story. About 8 years ago, on a similar day of heavy rain, an elementary school boy was returning home. He went missing the very same day, leaving only his school bag on the side of the ditch. The school was notified, and teachers and guardians searched for him, but could not find anything. A few hours later, the boy was found in a ditch several hundred feet away from where he was believed to have fallen, where his school bag was left on the road. The boy's body had been sucked away by the tremendous force of the water, and he was found with every bone in his body broken. It was the vice principal who had yelled at us who found the body, which was stiffened in a snarled shape with its limbs folded into directions it shouldn't be. It was a famous accident among those who lived in the area at the time, and everyone remembers it well. Since the accident, the vice principal began to patrol the students' route on rainy days. Later, the vice principal called me and told me that he was worried about whether anyone had been hurt or not. He mentioned to my mother that when he was out on his round as usual, he saw us gathered in a ditch at the bottom of the hill, so he instantly got frightened and ran to the spot. He also said, "I was so worried because that was the exact spot where the boy had fallen." Since the accident, the ditch on the way to school had been covered with a lid, so he said he was really wondering why the lid was open only that spot on that day. If the vice principal had not come there and warned us, I feel that my friend would have been dragged into the ditch like that boy. Later, when I was talking with my friends who had gone home together, we were saying how glad and grateful we were that the vice principal had come. But when we talked about who had suggested that we put the umbrella in, we found out none of us had said so. Exactly who made such a suggestion that day? Whenever it rains heavily, I still remember the scene of that day vividly, the loud voice and the expression of the vice principal, and whoever's voice saying, "Let's put our umbrellas in."